Welcome to Artcasters, episode 372. Tonight we're going to talk about webcomics, we're going to talk about Webtoons, and we're bringing back Guminelly, who we've had on previously on the show. And fun thing, we had her before she launched her webcomic, and now we're going to kind of check in and see how that's doing. And a little bit of a spoiler, it's doing very well. So we'll kind of check in with her in a minute. But before we do that, let's introduce ourselves. So my name is Corey Kerr. You can catch my stuff at coreykerr.com. I'm releasing a couple different video series. So one is on kind of some techniques on how to reverse engineer different art things. I'm calling that the art card catalog because each time you do that, you add a little tidbit of information into your library that you can pull out to do work. And so I've got the first one of those out. I think it's pretty good, so you should check that out. And then the other one would be kind of, I'm continuing the series on kind of intentional creativity. And you check those out as well. So if you go to coreykerr.com/email, get signed up on the email and newsletter and make sure that you don't miss out on those things. And I have other things that are available for sale that I'll talk about later. But before we kind of move on with that, Scott, before the dogs come and you have to mute, where can people find your stuff?
First of all, definitely check out Corey's video. It's excellent. I can't wait to see more. And it looked like it was performing pretty good. So it always kind of, you don't know, you put a lot more time into a video. You hope it performs better. So it looks like it's paying off. So I want to see more videos like that. But you can find my stuff at my website at circworks.com, where you can find my digital products, tools and things to help you make comics. There's a few of them there, as well as my comic, Young and the Dead. It's a kids versus zombie adventure story. Think Goonies meets Night of the Living Dead. If you like 80s nostalgia, if you like Stranger Things, Goonies, Monster Squad, all that stuff, think that, but with zombies. Definitely check that out. And my YouTube channel is still up. I'm not posting new content, but I will be soon. I'm getting closer, and it's going to be all new. But so definitely check in there. And there's still over 1,000 videos on there on making comics and making art and making money from art and making, having success doing that. So check that out.
Cool. And Josh, you said you've been contacted by someone.
Yeah. So before mentioning the contact, I want to reiterate what Scott said. Do check out that video by Corey. I even did like a video recently inspired by it because it's such like, it's a topic that like all of us, like Scott, Corey, and I have talked about for years. And I don't think any of us did like a video or really visually showed the concept. And he does such a good job of kind of revealing like a superpower that you should have as an illustrator. If you should watch it because it's educational and hopefully it levels you up in art. And Corey, I saw like a little snapshot of the power of your instructive skills. So really cool. But check out that video, guys. I have some things, one that arrived in the mail. I had to dress in all black today to kind of get in the special ops mode. I haven't really revealed this on stream before, but I kind of, I'm working on this book about Elizabeth Barrett Browning, which is historical fiction. And that got me in this whole realm of working with a whistleblower that's been providing me with like secret information in the mail. And so I received a package. I have this for both self-defense and also to open the package. So I was going to open it up on stream if that's okay. And if I disappear during this process, just, call the proper authorities. Okay. So we're going to open it up and see what it is. While we're opening it up, I'll just say like my graphic novels are Jacob's Apartment, 2 stories. Check those out. That's where you find me. And we'll just open up this package from, I don't know, there's like alphabetical letters on it, on the cover. Very nicely sealed. Let's see.
In solidarity, I've gone black and white for you.
Okay, good. Yeah. Oh my goodness, you guys, the documents arrived. This is Gary Hodges, the informant, who is revealing the deep, dark secrets of DVSM 1979. These are in print right now. You guys should order these. Gary's a good friend of the show. And also he's a brave man. And honestly, if you start seeing these arrive at your place, Scott just disappeared off stream.
Oh, what happened?
I don't know.
Honestly, I don't know what happened.
That's what happens when you talk about DVSM.
No, what I was going to say was
Scott's been silenced.
Am I silent?
No.
Oh, you're good now.
Okay.
Yeah,
I didn't realize
we got the connection.
I didn't realize this was top secret. I've had it out on my coffee table. I've had people coming over doing work and people flipping through it, and so I apologize about that. I didn't realize.
Gary, if we put you at risk by revealing that these are available on your Dinosaurs versus Marsbots Etsy site, we apologize.
Yeah, I will say that signing your name on something like that is an interesting move, but yeah. So, Emily, tell us who you are and where we can find your stuff.
Yeah, I am Emily. You'll find me online as Guminelly. And I have a webcomic called Seeing Red. It's on Webtoon. We're on YouTube now, different thing. And it's on Webtoon Canvas, not originals. It is takes place in a society much like yours and mine, but there's variants, people with supernatural abilities who are forced into hiding or subjected to what's called rehoming. And it's a kind of a cast drama action story about trying to help people who are stuck in these situations, but also having to deal with all the crummy things that have happened to them. So, yeah.
Cool. So let's get. I guess we had you on. How long ago did we have you on?
I think it was October. No, it was before October. I remember I went, like my first episode came out October, and we went before that. So maybe it was like September. I don't know. What's up? I know this person. Thanks.
And they are a reader.
Thanks. Hi.
Yeah. So tell us, like, give us some of the stats, because it was really fun. Like we met with you before you had launched, and you had been working kind of behind the scenes for a while.
Yeah.
And I was in the back going, "Just put it online," and you're like, "It's not ready."
Yeah. Timeline wise, I started. It was a baby idea in like 2020. So I spent a really long time writing it because I'm not confident in my writing skills. I'm more confident in like I'll figure out how to draw all the things I have to draw. But like if I've written a bad story, then it doesn't matter. So I just wrote for like probably like 9 months out of that. And then because I'm slow at that, I didn't realize it was such a slow process. But October, I put things live. It stayed around 300 people. And then I don't know why, but Webtoon just kept featuring me in things. And so I got featured on like the front page for a week. That bumped me up to 1,000 people. 2 days after I hit 1,000, I got 2,000. And then what's the third month of the year? January, February, March. March, I had like 3,000. And that's when I was like, oh my gosh, like this is time to celebrate. But during that time, I just kept rolling. I'm at 6,500 now.
Nice.
And yeah, granted, I keep getting featured, so it's not like it's like organically blossoming and I'm not like it's just magically people are coming or something, but like it's doing okay, So
well, you say you keep getting featured as if that's not also an accomplishment. It's not like they randomly pick the worst comics on the site.
Really good stories who should be featured more, but I just feel very lucky that it's happened a couple times now.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool. So now that you're like a multimillionaire, anyway, so it's kind of interesting. So let's go like back. I want to get because you told me this story. I don't know that Josh has really heard this story, but like at one point in time, really early on, We'll go back to little Emily in college. Baby Emily. And she was one of my designers in a student-run advertising agency. And I kept telling her, like, you gotta draw. You gotta learn how to draw. And then she'd draw for a couple days and then kind of get distracted or whatever.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you were like, I'm going to do this. And you just immediately leveled up. I remember we fought a little bit because I think you misunderstood what I was saying. Because I was telling you
about line width, I believe.
Yeah, because you were doing this thing that everybody does at the beginning, which is everything is a thin black stroke with no indication of like weight or, tapering or any thought for why putting lines down. And I was and I think you thought I was trying to push you into my style. And you're like, I don't want to draw like you, and I was just trying to push you away from something that looked bad. And then all of a sudden, I don't know what happened, but you seemed to take it seriously and kind of take off. And then you like leveled up like once after another, like really quickly.
Well, and also like while I was in my like writing phase when I wasn't, because I drew like, if you go stalk my Instagram, you'll see it's like magical girls forever, just like fairies and mermaids and like just stuff that came easier to me, but didn't really have like any like meaning to me, I guess. And so then when I was writing, like all I wanted to do was draw my characters, and it went from like really bad, like I barely knew how to draw guys. Like they're just hard. Like their posture is totally different. All their weight is like in their shoulders. I didn't understand it. And so I just would draw my characters and try to like figure out what they looked like and try to figure out how to draw the same character more than once, like just twice, just try to replicate them. And so there was a lot of like me being like, all right, I have this giant practice phase in which I can nail down things like facial expressions, like not just looking at the camera like, cute and serious or something, but like laughing, crying, all of the facial expressions. And yeah, I definitely leveled up a lot more that way.
Okay, so let's slow down a little bit. I'm kind of curious, like, what were you doing at that point to like overcome what you perceived as some of your areas where you're kind of a little bit blind or a little bit lacking? Like, what was the actual activities that you would do, or what was your schedule like?
Thankfully, I was just like driven enough. I would just write and then I would go draw. Like sometimes I'd write a scene and then I'd be like, I really want to like see this. And so then I would draw it. But also like I would sit down and be like, I still don't know what Aaron looks like. I need to get him figured out. Or like I have an idea of what he's going to look like, but he just looks like garbage right now. It took me forever to get his character design right, because he's got like, I wanted his chinks to look kind of sunken and like just things that are not, he's just a scrawny guy, and I just didn't know how to draw a scrawny guy. So yeah, I just didn't have him nailed down. And so like I would just draw him over and over again until I found something, And so, but I also did like gesture drawings, like the timed sessions. You can find those on YouTube and stuff. Those are awesome. And that helped me understand form and like movement and be able to just like, this person's like standing up after they just sat down, but it's like halfway in the motion. If you like don't understand form and like the shape of people, then that's super hard to do.
Yeah. So gesture drawing, for those that are kind of not in the know on that, is kind of more quick drawings where you're trying to find like the weight or the fluidity or the flow of a form or a figure. There's a bunch of different things that you can do with it. So you were saying that you didn't go to like live classes.
No.
You like found YouTube channels where they had like posed and timed.
Yeah. Like it was like a model in front of the camera, right? And there's ones with or without clothing. Like there's different playlists based off your comfort level, I guess. But it's like the warm up is like, this photo of this person, and it's all the same person throughout the whole session, which is really nice because then you start to understand this particular person. It's also nice because it's like, okay, I really need to look at like just a guy's form, and this is like, this guy has a medium build. Let's start with this guy in his session. And so, yeah, it'd be like 30 seconds, and then it changes to a different pose for 30 seconds, and then the time keeps increasing. The last one is like 5 or 10 minutes. So then you can just sit there and like draw that person, actually study them. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Awesome. So yeah, so tell us, I was doing webcomics in like 2012. Mm-hmm. So it was a significantly different kind of market then. And then it was like you had your own WordPress and you'd install this kind of specific template. And yeah, like it was, I guess it would, at the time it was pretty cutting edge, but now it's like pretty old school. Like if you're listening to like the Making Comics podcast or the Comics Lab or those types of things, they refer to it as as like the first or the second age of comics, right?
Yeah.
Webcomics. So what is it like? Because I'm scrolling through right now. What's it like doing it on Webtoons? Because like the one obvious thing is you're no longer really planning this out for the page. Even for a horizontal screen, you're doing it more for like vertical scrolling on a phone. So yeah.
I like the vertical scroll because like one of the things that I don't like about comic books is that like I always read, it's always, the page layout is always, it builds to the last panel all the way to the bottom right, and those are like the most impact. That's the panel where somebody gets shot or something, you know. And then I turn the page and I don't get any of the build up because I just saw, well, somebody get shot right there, you know. And like my eyes always jump to that impact thing. I don't know why people don't just put the impact thing on the when you turn the page. But so the thing that I really like about like the vertical scroll is that like you can focus and just like watch it. It feels way more like cinematic because you're going like shot by shot. And so that's something that I always liked. But there's like this natural gravity to everything. And so like instead of moving things left to right, things move down. And that's really fun because you get to play with like just flowier things, I think. Mm-hmm. Like the transitions from things are really cool. And yeah, I like that whole vibe. It makes it harder for going the backwards way. Like it is easier to go page layout first and then cater that to a vertical scroll, but I just like the vertical scroll a lot, so I designed it with that in mind first.
Yeah, I hadn't considered that advantage to the vertical scroll as far as like with the problems with some page turns, because although good comic artists would plan that out so they know where their page turns is, it's not always, especially if you're doing your own comic, it's a little easier. But if you work for like one of the big publishers, right, they place ads in there and you don't know how that's going to affect your pages, so they could put an ad somewhere and that could throw your pages off, and all of a sudden the reveal you were planning as a page turn is on the opposite page. So
it's just something like I'm very easily distracted when I read already. And so, my screen went dark. That's good.
Well, oh my goodness. Did you get a copy of Dinosaurs versus Mars Bots? Is that why you've been cut off?
Even though the video is going, my computer went like sleeping. Like, your computer's resting. It will shut down shortly. Just had to wiggle the mouse, I guess.
Okay, because we're still seeing you. So
that's good. That's good.
But be careful because there are like special ops. Like Scott and I took a big risk in showing.
They're out my window right now.
You never know.
Through my window, they're here.
Okay, help me with the timing on this. I might be remembering this incorrectly, but fans of my work might notice, and you'd have to be like a super fan to notice this because this is a pretty deep cut, but there is one shot in one of the animated films that I've done. If you look at Be Mine, which is a music video that I did, Emily was the one who painted the backgrounds for that. And I'm wondering, did that inform your kind of thought through vertical scrolling? Because it was a shot that started on the ground and then whipped several miles into the air through the kind of the atmosphere into space and then kind of back down. Where were you on your kind of journey of figuring out this format?
So that was, I had started drawing the first 3 episodes, and I redid the first 3 episodes, but I redid them after. So like timeline stuff was, I was like, I'm ready to finally start drawing. And then I got a gig, and so then I paused it, and that was the gig. But then I kept drawing it, and but to be honest, like landscapes on backgrounds, like they break your brain anyways, because you have to think about the movement of stuff. And so it didn't inform it so much as like I had already been like for a webtoon, it doesn't break your brain as much because you experience that flow like as you want to, as opposed to, okay, well, if this is happening, then this and this and this has to look like this. But I did really like doing that sky scene because I had already been doing stuff like that. Like if you open up like episode 1, right, there's like a sky to ground, shot. And so I mean, I'm kind of, anytime that I get the chance to do like sky with some clouds in it, I'll do it. And you'll notice that a lot in my comic, even though it's indoors frequently. So yeah, it didn't inform so much. It's just like my brain was already in that space.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. Well, I love the way what you did for the background of that. I love the way that we were able to kind of see like layers of the atmosphere through the kind of gradation of change of color. And so as the camera whipped down, and you do that in your comic as well, you'll notice that, like, I'm talking to the people listening. You already know this because you made it, but as you're looking at that, you'll notice that the colors gradually or sometimes suddenly change depending on whether, you want that to kind of be a slow reveal or kind of an abrupt thing. So it is really interesting because also the spacing, because we always say that like space equals time in comics, but when you're looking at like a spread, you can't really control the viewer's eye. But when you're scrolling, you can't actually control like how long it takes them to scroll.
Yeah. You'll notice in webtoons, like ones that are really specific to like, I'm doing this for the scroll. Some like canvas ones, especially, you can tell when they're making the book first because they lay it out like the book, just down. And so things are really tight and close together. And it still looks good. It's just not the same thing. And like you'll notice in webtoon gutters, like here's the panel and here's the gutter. Like it's huge because when you scroll, you also like kind of flick the finger and it flies up, so there's that. But also like I can literally, like if I want there to be a transition, like a time change or a scene change, I put like a screen's worth of white in there, and then it takes longer for you to actually get to the next part. And so that's really nice because I can control the time it takes for you to read it.
Yeah, that's really cool.
So I have a question as somebody who's not too familiar with Webtoon. So what's Canvas? Is that where you're publishing like on your own and it's not something that they're paying you to do? Is that
right? So like if you go into Webtoons, the originals is all the front page stuff because that's the stuff that is like they are paying this creator to make this webtoon, and it comes out on a weekly basis, and they're like 40 to 80 panels a week.
Okay.
And sometimes more. And then you go to Canvas and it's just independently made, and so, yeah.
So maybe I'm getting ahead of myself so I'm curious because I'm like when you start to see some success like you had, if you are doing the Canvas version, what are, and maybe you haven't explored this yet, but are there ways to like monetize that? Is it like, do you attach that to like a Patreon or?
Yeah, so you can do Patreon. There's like after you hit a certain threshold of views per month, which I'm not there yet. It's a lot. But you can get ads on your episode.
Okay.
But yeah, they have an ad revenue thing. There's also Patreon, and then aside from that, like you can monetize it any way that you might monetize it.
Yeah. Okay.
If it were on your website, minus the part where you have control over how much ads people see.
And do they have any like things you have to go around? Are they kind of cool with getting people off of the platform, like to go to your Patreon?
Yeah, like they actually have like it's not like a plugin, but like if you have a Patreon, then you can put like your Patreon link as a specific, like put in your Patreon, like not just your website, but here's your Patreon. And usually for the creators, they will say there, this is how many patron members like they have. This is so like they definitely integrate the Patreon well, but also like you can put your own ads at the bottom of the screen and stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So it's not like Instagram where they do whatever they can to keep you there and not share links so you can get off of it.
Yeah. Like you have a creator page if people like want to know more about you, and you can put like link in bio type things in there. So yeah, I have my links, and then
So how is your engagement as far as the people that are reading it? Are there a lot of people? You got like super fans and things like that?
Yeah, like there's definitely people who comment every week, or not every week, every episode. I publish twice a month, so every 2 weeks, Mondays.
Nice.
But yeah, I have some people who are like showing up consistently in those comments, and like I'm recognizing them, which is really cool. And then I have like people who I know are reading, but like don't comment all the time, and it's nice.
Yeah, it's like YouTube. It's like YouTube.
Yeah. And but yeah, it's good. I mean, I get the most engagement on Webtoon. My following has never like really gotten big anywhere else. On Webtoon, like I have the most eyes. Like I have not even 1,000 followers on Instagram. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's the best feeling.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I love seeing like, and I'm getting like a good, like usually the like lesser end of like comments is like 18, 17 comments.
That's nice.
Yeah, awesome. So like there's engagement every time.
Well, it sounds like there's also like organic growth in there, so it's like it's continuing, which is good, and kind of increasing as it goes. So that's a really good sign.
It is nice. Yeah.
I have a question about the scrolling. So do you ever intend to kind of make it for print, or is it intended like for web?
I would like to print it.
Okay. Are you designing it in a way where you can reformat it for print?
I'm designing it with the vertical scroll totally in mind, because I haven't done page layouts for comics before. But I am like setting myself up to have less headaches. So like I'm still really high res, and like I'm also I separate so much in layers wise. So like there's a little bit of wiggle room, and also I have a lot of like empty flat backgrounds that I could just like move around if I have to restructure a panel.
Awesome.
It's not like a solid image. So I have the foundations for being able to do it. I really need to actually get into a page and see how absurd it's going to be to reformat that. But yeah, because part of me is like, I see potential for like, I don't know, the first chapters are just so ugly to me. But, you know, like I shouldn't redo those. But like in my head, I'm like, what if there's a reboot? You know, reboot and have to draw it all again. So
the nice thing is you come from a graphic design background. And I've noticed that when cartoonists or illustrators come from a graphic design background, they have such a huge leg up compared to just coming from illustration.
Truth.
Yeah.
there's so much there that comes from composition or layout or those types of things, because a lot of people that just get into cartooning, they're not necessarily thinking about the things that you just mentioned, which are very huge.
I mean, it's been amazing because I made my like logo for the comic, like the title logo, and like I made that, and it's not papyrus, you know.
Yeah.
It looks good.
You guys, it's not papyrus; it's just straight Comic Sans.
Yeah, it is Comic Sans, but it's not papyrus. But yeah, like I have that, and also just like me having to cobble together some page layout. I can handle it. It's just how much of a headache is it going to be, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and like actually, I think the way that you're setting up for scrolling is really smart. Because most books I do are like for print, right? But if I were intending to try to really blow something up on the web, the idea of like formatting it specifically for the web is just brilliant. Because like I think sometimes people make that failure. So you've made like some really good choices on it. Like to do it in full color is really smart because color is going to do way better online. The style you're doing is very like catchy, which I think is really good for like, so that's going to lead to growth. And then aside from that, like the design aesthetics, so you got that on most people starting. But yeah, I think the way you've approached it is really smart for like, I'm honestly, having looked at it, I'm like, I'm not super surprised that you're getting a good reaction because it's also just like really appealing to read online, and not all comics translate that way. And I'm glad you didn't just do the stitch that a lot of people do, because I do think that gives you a huge just aesthetic win there, you know?
Yeah, and it's fun. And also, like, I do have, like, this underlining concern of, like, is it going to be okay in a page layout? But, like, I've definitely, I own, like, a volume or two of Lore Olympus, which started the same way that I am. And it also has absurdly long panels, too.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, and so, like, I'm like, you know, I feel like the first volume got criticized a little bit, but, like, now they figured it out. Like, it's good. It's fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And Corey's dead on about like your background in design is going to like give you a really big advantage with that too. Cause it's like most designers can handle like a job where it's like, hey, we got like pre-made images. We just have to reformat them for a different layout. It's like, you got this. You know? So,
yeah. We got a couple questions here. So as I was kind of scrolling through, we had a few people mention the color. So how do you come up with your palettes?
That's a good question.
My characters are color coded, and that informs a lot. So Aaron is like grays, blues. He wears black most of the time. Gail is like very heavily with reds and sometimes yellows, so she usually wears pink. And any like intense, she's dealing with her demons type stuff, it's in red instead of blue. And for Aaron, it's blue. And like those are the two main perspectives I cut in between. And so I have actually like CSP is awesome because you can set like a color palette, and so I usually color pick from just a set palette there, and the skin tones, the eyes, the hair, it's all the same. I just will like render on top of that and like multiply down, and they're in somewhere really yellow, so I've added yellow on top of all of them to kind of make them look warmer or whatever.
Nice.
And like the episode that you had pulled up a lot, Corey, that one was like, that was all gradient map, most of it. And so it was like, I just made the light ends this color blue, the dark ends this color blue, mediums were this, and then like the super highlights were yellow because that was coming from like the light in the hallway. And so but there's like a thematic structure to the colors there because there's a lot of colors in my comic. Like the different powers that people have, like those are color coded, and so that also informs a lot of what colors I associate with that character and stuff. So
that's awesome.
That's cool. And you've kind of alluded to some stuff that you're not expounding on, but you have done a ton of research on like PTSD and kind of other types of things. And I would say that your characters are fairly accurately responding to their like history and environment and stuff, because you didn't just kind of like say, I don't know, this guy's angry. You're like, how would somebody respond? And you were talking to people with PTSD and also like doing a bunch of research on those types of things. So like how much did that inform the writing? How much of that informed the art?
Well, like Aaron, for example, he's been in solitary confinement basically for 5 years. And you go and like type what happens when somebody's alone for 5 years, and you get like, they have trouble sleeping, like muscular atrophy, and it's like, okay, but like what is that like, you know what I mean? And so like I went and like read like firsthand account books and stuff to try to understand more, and like that's just something that I don't think a lot of people understand, how much that sucks, and how much it ruins you. And I didn't understand that before I started researching either. So like, I'm glad I did, because I was like, how do I go through this character's arc and get into it? Because he's been through it, but like, what do I make him do to show that? Like, how do I convey he's sad? Like, in what way? In what way is he having problems? And so like that helped so much, because that was the one where I was like, I didn't realize this character was as sad as he was until I started reading these accounts. Yeah, like it's funny, because it's kind of like when you do this, like I'm gonna go research like crazy, because like PTSD, I was like, I'm not gonna have this character who has this grim backstory, and then they go, why am I thinking about this now? And then it's a flashback, and like that's how the PTSD is like represented, because that's like how it's always represented, and it's kind of just, it's just a storytelling mechanism of like, they have trauma, so they're having flashbacks so that I can tell you through flashback their trauma. And I was like, well, if I'm going to give somebody PTSD, I'm going to give them PTSD. And so like I was like, okay, what are the symptoms? What does this apply? What about this character and how they behave? And how does that apply to them specifically? They just have this kind of attitude. They might respond differently than like this person that I watched a ton of YouTube videos from. You know, like this person has a totally different disposition than this person does. So they're going to react differently. And it's a lot of getting into their head.
I love that. I think that's really cool too, because I've been thinking about this a lot lately, of just sort of what we feed ourselves as artists. And I meet a lot of cartoonists that, especially young cartoonists, and it's cool to hear that you're not falling into this trap, but I hear a lot of early cartoonists kind of fall into the trap of all they're consuming is comics. And then like what they end up making is usually a recycled comic. And I think looking to external sources for research, for inspiration, for stuff like that, which it's pretty clear you're doing, is just such a, like, again, you're kind of doing some things that I think are going to give you a really huge leg up, like as you continue, because that's great for developing story and also helping you like get your head out of just doing comics. Because when we live in little comic bubbles, you know, we shouldn't be surprised like everybody's comic is like the same. You know, like it all starts feeling like it's you know, Batman but with a different costume, or like, you know what I mean? And so I think it's cool that that you're taking that extra effort, and also like, you know, it's got to be fascinating for you, like give you more kind of material to kind of play in like the world that we're, you know, that you're building. So that's really cool.
Thanks. Yeah, and I also have this advantage and disadvantage of like, I'm making a comic, but I didn't start reading comics until I wanted to make one.
Yeah.
So like I don't know. Like a lot of people talk about, oh, the this and the this. Do you know about this guy and this artist? And that's cool. I've never heard that name before. And so like I just am drawing from, because like when I first came up with the idea, like I didn't read comics. I wanted to write a book, and I was a really cringy middle schooler. and wanted to write something. And so like it was made for that first, like that idea spawned from that. But like when it popped back into my head again, I was like, well, I'm an artist now, so I could draw this.
Oh yeah,
cooler. And so yeah, I mean, it is for a number of reasons. I was a terrible writer back in the day anyways, but yeah.
Unlike all the brilliant junior high artists out there, like, you know, yeah.
But yeah, like then I started going like, oh crap, I want to make a comic. I don't know anything about comics. And so then I started trying to find ones that I would like, but like I'm really not like a tights and capes person. Like I don't like I have one volume of what's her name, Black Widow, but I don't have anything else. I don't have anything from DC. I have How to Make Comics the Marvel Way. That's my 2 Marvel things.
Yeah, that's a good book. But yeah, no, I totally think that could be a huge advantage, you know, because again, like, you know, even if like somebody was like writing Westerns or something and all they read are Westerns, I feel like everything's going to start feeling like Westerns that already existed. Whereas like if they start going to like more of the sources, start reading historical documents, maybe looking at sci-fi and seeing like what elements of storytelling, like I just think that's a great method, you know, to kind of go like, outside of the immediate conclusion. And that's design thinking. Again, that's a heads up from graphic design for sure.
And that even like the best Westerns are informed by like other things, like the Magnificent Seven is
and hotel chains,
Seven Samurai, you know, like and the best sci-fi is kind of anyway very similar things. But
you missed my best Western dad jokes, so like no one laughed. Like I was like, oh man. I mean, I'm used to a non-response from a dad joke, but that one just flew, and I was like, oh man, that did not land.
I can't hear. What was it? Do it again.
Well, you said some of the best Westerns, and you were kind of describing, and I was like, our hotel chains. Like anyhow, sorry. It's and now it's just that has. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for watching before. I'm glad you all left now. That is a good point though. Do you feel like that came from some of Corey's classes? Do you feel like that came from sort of just having a general like education, like other courses included in like your educate, like where do you think that kind of thinking came from for like being like, if I'm going to write about somebody with this, I'm going to read about this. Like where do you
that definitely helped because Corey talked so much about my camera is blurry. Talked so much about like I've applied this a lot, like the drinking upstream versus downstream. You know? Like if all the good ideas have flown down to the bottom and like that's at the top of Pinterest, which is just flooded with stuff that is still popular, even though like that recipe came out 10 years ago, like is just what flowed to you, and it's there because it's traveled far. And so like, but if you drink from the top of the stream, then you're gonna get the good stuff. But like that definitely has an influence. So like that probably like subliminally like helped me, like I'm gonna go to the source, but also like I'm just too I dive in head first to everything things that I really care about. I just like dive into it. And so like, and I also like am very like, my writing isn't good enough yet. My writing isn't good enough yet. And so I spent so long like trying to make things line up. Like there were character arcs that didn't have really satisfying closure or like trajectory forever. Important characters, like they needed to have it. And so like I've definitely spent like massive brainstorm sessions of like, okay, her goal is this. I've done lots of like watching about like story structure and character arcs and like all of those things too.
Yeah.
But yeah, there were certain things where like because I came up with the idea so long ago, I just came up with things that seemed interesting and entertaining. And then when it came back into my head, I realized like, oh, there was a lot going on here that I never even delved into. I just understand that now because I am an adult and I understand emotions a lot better. And so, or I understand societal failings a lot better. Like I can write about this more. And so like a lot of the themes there, like I was surprised that I had little seeds of things that I would actually be really interested to delve into more.
Yeah.
I came back to it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think we don't give kids enough credit. Like we might not be able to articulate what's going on as children, but we're in the world and we're feeling it and we're kind of experiencing it. And that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's all there.
On that note too, I think one of the things that, kids have kind of innately and then adults kind of forget to have, and luckily like design and the act of being creative can hopefully wake this up in people, is just that pursuit of like curiosity, where you get curious about something like, how does like somebody with PTSD, like, I'm writing about this, like, I'm kind of curious. And I think that's cool to kind of indulge in that curiosity. And like, it's neat that like, even the curiosity you had as a kid where you'd like maybe drop something that you didn't even realize was like food for like a lot of content could become so important like later on, because again, it's just that it's like, it's one of those things that kind of feeds, like if you chase curiosity, it like, it helps academic pursuits, it helps like art, it helps all of that. So that's really cool. But it's interesting to think of your younger self kind of inspiring you later with a story you wrote, like with things that you may not have even thought, like where you're like, whoa, I didn't even know I was onto something there.
Yeah, like there was so much, I'm like, this story is heavy. Was I okay? like there's little things where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is pretty serious stuff, younger Emily. What are you thinking? And then like delving into it more, it's just like, oh wow, no, this is intense. Like
Another question. So if it's all right for me to ask, what led you to or inspired the texture work that you use in your comic? It's always been an aspect of your art that I've really loved.
Oh, well, that's funny because I feel like the comic looks really textureless. Like I don't know. I just, when I was doing like the illustration one-off, drawings that I used to do, I was very, it was like lineless, and it was like a lot of pastel colors that didn't have a lot of contrast. And so like having that like feel to it, I've always liked that. I don't like the little like simple pen inkers that are really smooth, because when I am drawing, I don't know, a circle, and I have to stop halfway through drawing that circle and then put the pen back down, it never lines up. And so if you have a gritty, nasty brush, then it doesn't matter. There's also that.
Don't give away that secret. I'm joking.
So I always use a rough brush, and sometimes I'm like, should this brush be rougher? I don't know, because I work in my canvas size length is 50,000 pixels. So
nice.
Sometimes I'm like, is this, I'm making it at such a high resolution, is this even going to come through? And then when I look at it at, the size of my phone, I'm like, where did it all go? But yeah, I mean, I've always liked the painterly type stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, like if you, like Corey knows, like I did a lot of texture stuff for like the backgrounds in your music video. Just, it's yummy. I don't know. I really like it. So, and when I got to CSP, it was a lot of like manga stuff. So like texture was like halftones, and otherwise it was smooth, and I didn't like that. So I had to go hunting for a lot of brushes. Good resource is, what is it called? I get a lot of my brushes from True Grit Texture Supply.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love them so much, and they made stuff for CSP like last year or something. They finally put it on CSP, and so I bought that up real fast.
Nice.
Yeah.
So Scott, am I crazy, or does True Grit Texture Supply sell digital assets through some of the marketplaces you've sold through? I thought they did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. True Grit and Retro
Like design
Supply.
cuts?
Yeah, True Grit and Retro Supply are two, and they're both of them are starting to sell some more comic oriented stuff.
Yeah, I've noticed that. I follow them on Instagram.
As well as
whatever
myself,
they make.
you know. I don't do a lot of textures necessarily, but I've got, you know, brushes, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, they've got some really cool. Both of them have really cool color product that kind of replicates the look of like old school, like bin day dots and things like
Yeah,
that, and
I've
that old
seen
school
that.
printing. So and I've seen a few of them come out with. I'm not sure about True Grit, but I know Retro Supply, they put out a couple comic book style fonts and things like that. So
Nice.
yeah,
I love it. It's delicious. It's like the best stuff. Like, I love all those brushes. Yeah.
So what's
but
your?
I've got. Oh, I was going to say I bought. I think it's called Atomica by True. I think it's True Grit. Yeah, and it's something that does actually give that kind of pulp effect to stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of offsets stuff and kind of bleeds the lines together, so it looks like it's old school, like it printed on newsprint.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, they've got some cool products.
So what's your workflow like? Are you mixing like iPad stuff? Are you still on the XP pen?
Yeah, I'm still on the XP pen. I have a 24-inch. It's giant. And yeah, I mean, so the workflow for a long time was to do sketches on my iPad. I have CSP on my iPad and my computer. So I would like do sketches on the CSP. It's been hurting my wrist more to work on something that small, which is funny because I have like the big iPad. But yeah, just when you have like user interface from a computer program on an iPad, suddenly you have a lot less realty. What was the space? I don't know. I don't have a lot of space to work with. And so I have been like actually sketching on my desktop a lot more. And I'm like, my brain neuroplasticity has finally figured out how to like draw with that parallax of the screen. And now sketching isn't an issue for me there. Like it's really funny because the early episodes, like they look bad because I was new to my tablet, like my display screen. And so like I was new to CSP too. So it was all the product of like, well, I've been working on this for way too long. So it's done now. Not it's good, it's done. And so now I'm way more like comfortable with my tools. But yeah, workflow is like I have a giant script. It's broken down by episode. I did write them to be a lot longer than they are. And so sometimes I'll go back and rewrite the episode to shorten it down to 20 panels. So it's actually something I can put out in time, or figure out how I'm going to split this up into 2 episodes. So there's that. Then I'll go over to, I have like a template episode with like all of my like the side borders in, like if the panel's going to go in and not be full width, then this is like the margins of it. And then I will sketch. I'll like bring my like dialogue in and just start making stuff. It's really nice in CSP because they have tools that make your panels and for you and stuff. And then I'll go through sketching. I'll sketch the whole episode. And then I'll go page by page. I'll usually go panel by panel and like ink and then color, because then that kind of, sometimes I don't do the backgrounds until it's time to ink. And so going through each like background and figuring out this is where they are, this is the color influence on this scene and stuff. So yeah, I usually go color or panel by panel. So I'll do, the sketches are all done. All the panels are there. All of the dialogue is there. So like formatting wise, it's done. Now I need to do inks. I need to do flats, and I need to do rendering. And then I'll just start over on the next panel.
Cool. Okay, so quick question. The episodes, how many did you preload before you launched your comic? If you already answered this, then my apologies.
I didn't. I have a backlog of 5.
Okay.
So, and like right now, my backlog is more like 3 because I have episode 15 is out right now, I believe. And I finished episode 20. I haven't scheduled it yet. And then I'm working on episode 21. I'm behind schedule because I'm always behind schedule. So like in 2 weeks, I will have had like my full backlog there. Like usually a day or 2 after the episode for like that 2 weeks comes out, like 2 days later, I'll have that 5th episode in the backlog put up. And so it's nice because I always am behind schedule, but it means that it doesn't go up late. And it's not stressful, me working on the episode that's going to be going out, because I've definitely like caught errors or been like, this person was wearing a watch. Where'd the watch go? And then go.
Yeah, I'm literally working on that on a page right now as you're talking. Like there's pages where I moved a table in a room. And I'm like, I gotta redraw the table, and like there was a guy holding a mug and it disappeared on one panel. These things happen for sure. So having that extra time super important, because no matter how meticulous you stare at something long enough, you can make magic tricks happen between panels without realizing it.
Well,
so in my webcomic, I had a main character who had an entire forearm that was a hook, and there are like whole pages where I just forgot that was like a major part of that character, and he has 2 arms. Or sometimes it would switch arms, and I'd be like, I'm gonna go redraw.
Have you ever done the 2 left thumbs by accident? When I was younger, I did that once or twice, and I was so embarrassed. Where I was like, how did that happen?
In a panel, like in 2 panels in an episode that's live, and I was like, you know what? It still looks good. Whatever.
You're like, who's got 2 left thumbs? This guy. That's right.
I just drew a panel where it was a sketch to my defense. It was a rough sketch, and it was people shaking hands. And then when I went to do the tighter detail, I'm like, oh no, they're shaking the wrong hands. There's no way they could do that.
This is
so I had to switch the hands around.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and comics are complicated, like it's like you're doing like a crowd scene or something, and you can do as much visual acting as you want in your initial sketch. But sometimes even in your initial sketch, like other things I often have to correct is like I really am big on expressions, and I notice your comic does that too. Like you focus a lot on expressions and acting of the characters. And it's so easy when you have like 5 characters to just kind of do a cold expression on one, because you're thinking about all the key characters in the scene. And so the ancillary characters suddenly, might be like not reacting to something they need to react to. So like having that extra little window to be able to make that correction before it goes live. And sometimes, it's like you get what you get. But
Yeah, no, I very often will have, it'll keep me up at night. I'm like, the wording should have been this instead of this. And this implies this. So I've got to change it. And then like the next day I'll go in and just tweak the dialogue, or be like, the transition from this to this is too fast. I need to add in a panel. I didn't want to. I've been trying to avoid putting in another panel, but I need to do it. And then I'm not as mad in the moment of like one more panel. I finished that episode a long time ago. So like, I'll just go in and draw it.
Nice. That's a really good point too, because it's an instinct that you start building, and it sounds like you have, which is really good, to like chase that. Like when you have that moment of like, oh man, I gotta I love that you do allow yourself like a night and wake up with the like, okay, time to buckle down and do it, because it's like you're in service to the story. That's awesome. That's really cool.
And I also have like the emotional, I've gotten over this episode needs to be done. I need to finish it. There's no time for this panel, because that was 10 weeks ago. So Also the comment that was put up about the asymmetrical hairstyles. So like Aaron's hairstyle is whatever way his head is leaning, that's where his hair leans. Like I have certain rules for certain characters of like the boys who have like parted hair, they don't really have parted hair. It's just in between panels they went like this and now it's going this way. Like I have those little rules. Like I have certain characters thankfully I've not been struggling too much with like the left and right. Like this person's part on their hair goes this way and like it always goes this way and I usually don't ever get that wrong. But yeah, there's some characters where like I avoid drawing them head on because like their hair part is based off of what direction they're looking.
Yeah. Like Mickey Mouse's ears.
Yeah, it's totally that.
No matter where his head is going.
And so when I'm like, oh crap, I gotta draw this person head on, I have to make a decision right now.
That's funny. I definitely can see that. That's like one of the things a lot of people who haven't really tackled, and it looks like you've stacked up quite a few sequential pages, so now you know the horror. But that's one of the things that like I think a lot of people with like illustration or even design backgrounds where you're thinking, especially if you haven't done like book stuff, and it's like when you start working sequentially, it's just a whole different beast because again, you draw that part and it works on the side. And if you didn't consider the front, at some point you're going to have to, and it's like, oh no, like it's interesting. All the little conundrums that come up with sequential work, you know? Yeah.
And as a person who still has not made character sheets, like turnarounds or anything, yeah, it's always an adventure.
I think that's an okay approach though. Cause like there are some people who get really meticulous, but one of the fun things about working on your own property is you can develop that as you go.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're working with a team, it's like you kind of need those style sheets to get everybody on board.
Yeah.
And I do find that, and Corey, you can chime in on this, but I do find that like, you know, we've talked about this on here where some people get stuck in the Lord of the Rings trap where they think they're Tolkien and they're going to work for 3 decades on their great fantasy novel and they're coming up with the elf language. And it's like, before you know it, they're like 80 years old and like they have a big stack of notes and nothing to show for it. And it's like, now Lewis could get away with it because he's like a freaking linguist, like who worked at Oxford. Like he played with language for fun. So it's like, that's not actually that big of an ask from Lewis, right? Like, but not everybody's that. So I think it's cool that you've kind of avoided that trap with the, like, honestly, I don't do character sheets most of the time, unless it's a character that's going to be really challenging or weird. But I mean, sometimes it can be helpful, but what's fun about sequential work is eventually you're going to have every angle of that character.
Oh, yeah. And I learned how to draw the characters and figure out who they were from a functional perspective. Like I didn't have fun drawing them in turnarounds. I had fun drawing them like crying or something. So like that's just how I came to understand what that character looks like. And so to be like, now totally like sanitize this and make them stand in a turnaround is like
having everybody stand in T-pose.
And it's like I probably should get around to doing these things, but like right now my crutch is, well, I don't draw people standing straight like that, so I don't want to yet.
I was worried that you were going to fall into that trap. Because...
Oh yeah, me too. I started like October came around and I was like, if I die, what if I get hit by a car and I never posted my comment? Like there's a lot of that. Like, what if I spent all this time and then I get hit by a car or I lose my hand and like just something. And
the hand losing one, that's like the biggest fear of all of us is like losing our hand.
But yeah, like I spent so long. In the writing phase, it's never good enough, and it's probably because I'm not a writer, and so it is valid to think that. You know
what you need to start doing, and this is just a tip, is like stop saying you're not a writer because you are one now.
I am now.
Congrats.
You are a published writer.
Yeah, there you go. That's the big trick. Like Corey had a point where he wasn't a professor, you know, and like now he's a professor. And how did he become a professor? He had the first day of being a professor, and then tons of years after that. Like,
I convinced somebody to pay me to do that.
with good reason, you know.
when I was doing my webcomic, I got this idea in my head that I was going to have like, I'm just trying a little bit of a backlog, just a few pages, so that, because I was going to do a page a week, right? And I don't even know how many pages I amassed, but the only reason that I ever ended up publishing was that somebody was like, it was the Axe Cop guy. It was like, hey, I want to go. I'm getting married. I'm going to go on vacation for a couple of weeks. Does anybody want to like do some guest episodes or something? And I was like, I do. And so he was like, cool. And so I was like, I don't have anything up. And so I should put some stuff up in case people want to go from his site to mine.
Yeah.
And I think you had a similar thing with like, there was like a contest on Webtoons, right? Where you had kind of like an intro or there was some sort of like non-canonical kind of episode that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah. So this is fun because there were 80 readers, like 80 total subscribers to that by the time. Thank you. By the time that I.
Sorry.
You guys don't read D versus M. They'll send the dogs after you. I'm telling you, this is danger.
Let's slip the dogs of war.
Okay, what was I saying?
One of the most natural reactions that we've had of the show.
That is like I scream when the toaster goes off. So like, thank you for validating me. But the contest. So also part of the timeline was I had worked on the first 3 episodes. Fun fact, they were like 80 panels, so absurdly long, and I needed to cut them down and break them out. So like the first 3 episodes took us to where we like episode 10 or something. Like that's how long they were. And it was unwise because like each episode took me like a month and a half. And I was like, I just need to learn how to get faster. No, I needed to cut it down. But, and I also looked bad because as I was saying, I was new to the program and to the tools. So like, it was like, I didn't know how to draw anymore. It just didn't even look like something I had made. But, I drew those first 3 episodes, finished them, and was like, I'm working on my backlog. Still, I need to get to, I was really worried about backgrounds at the time. And so I was like, I'm going to get to like this point because it has a challenging background. And once that's behind me, then I think I can start posting things. And then I don't remember what came first, like working on the music video or the contest, but the contest came out. I was like, well, this is kind of like the perfect chance because it's for action, like only. And while mine is mostly a drama, there's action scenes in it, and like nobody has to know. So because no episodes are out, they don't have to know that it's actually a drama. So I made a non-canonical. If it were to happen, I had an idea for an episode that would have happened if any point at season 2, and so it's kind of like skipped the whole beginning and. This is them down the line, I guess. But it doesn't have anything to do with the plot line. It was just an idea. And so I used that one as and then I had to expound it a lot. I had to do a little bit of world building in it. And I had to do like just enough to like tease, I guess, like, hey, stick around, there's more coming. And yeah, I made this whole like pal wham punchy punch like version of it. And yeah, I made a whole episode. It was like 100 panels. It was like just under like the like image size requirement. Like they have for Webtoon, you can only submit 800 by 1280 pixel size images, so you have to like splice up your episode. And I had to shorten up all the gutters so that it could fit into like I can only submit 100 of those or something. And I was in that. It was so long because I write long, I guess. But I made that, and then I had a whole episode that actually had like something going, and that is when I came back and decided I need to redo all these episodes because I've leveled up when I made this episode, this one that is for the contest.
Yeah.
And it was nice because like on Webtoons, if you have like under a certain amount of followers or subscribers, it doesn't really show up in the search. Like people have to direct link click to your like episode in your series to read it. They can't just go into the search bar and be like seeing red. Anything else that has red or seeing red in the title or in the like artist name is going to pull up before mine. And so it was nice because it pulled up in a contest page. So people would organically like, I want to see all the entries. Oh, this one.
Yeah.
Mine. And so I never had to deal with that. Like I never had to deal with like, if only people could see it, even though it's here. And so it was nice. It put me on a nice little spot. I had 80 people and I thought that was nice. And it's cool now because there's like a lot more than that. And like there's this episode that they're never going to see, but it's fun to think about. It's kind of Easter eggy to me.
I love that. Really cool.
What you guys are seeing on the screen now is Emily's background fully. I gave her a full scene in this. I was like, all right, I want it to look like this.
Yeah.
And she painted the whole thing.
I really liked that. Like,
yeah, when Corey was like showing us kind of like me and Scott behind the scenes, like what everybody was contributing to this, we were all like pretty stunned by this. Like we were like, this is because I think at the time you were like just out of college or maybe still in, and we were just like, how? Like it's really stunning. It's really cool.
Thank you. I mean, yeah, I had the advantage of like I'm not an animator, but I've made assets for animation before. And so like that, the part where you get really confused and don't understand how it works and then like give the animator like the wrong layer structure and stuff, like that was already done. So like I've already done that. So I could just draw stuff. But yeah.
That's cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was great. So Nicole S says, confession, I'm supposed to be doing a final project, but I'm absolutely enamored by this Seeing Red IRL lore.
Yay. I'm like, yeah, thank you. I'm always like, I feel like at some point I'm going to give away spoilers on accident because I love to give away like lore. But yeah, I love lore.
You should just spoil something right now. Just kidding. You don't have to.
No, I can't. You know what's lucky? My brain just blanked on what I could even spoil. So
that's got to be a bit of a challenge since you're working so far ahead. Like you say that you're behind, but in actuality, you're still like 5 episodes ahead. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And so you are. I mean, that's one of those challenges that you get when you're working on, when you're working professionally on things.
Yeah.
Is what you're currently thinking about, no one's going to see for like 2 months.
Yes. Yeah. So like, it's funny because I'm finally hitting episodes where I'm like, oh, this is a really pretty episode, or this is a cool episode. Finally, 10 weeks later, they'll be able to see it. And there was so much of like, you guys don't know what's coming. This is going to be great. And yeah, there's a lot of like, by the time that episode comes out, I just want to be like, this is the episode where you're going to love it. We won't tell.
I have a question regarding just like, so this is a story you've kind of lived with for a long time. Are you at the point where you kind of, have those weird moments where your characters kind of take on a life of their own, kind of like you were describing with the PTSD thing, where you're like read about what your character went through and you're like, oh wow, now I have to like reapproach like how they're kind of dealing with things, because that's like a really consequential thing for somebody. It's interesting to me, like to talk to writers, because usually people run the gamut from one or the other, where they get really occupied with the character, or they're very like cold and calculated, and like the gods just kind of making the thing happen and being like, ha ha ha. So which side do you kind of fall on, and like what is the experience of kind of writing character based stuff for you? Like, because obviously you're you got to be kind of close to these characters if you live with them for that long.
They're my babies. Like, and also like, I heard an author talk about this like in a way that kind of changed it. And then when I started like writing characters, I understood it, which is like, it's more like you're learning about them.
Yeah.
It's like you're discovering them, because there's some characters where they're very heavily drawn off of like how I feel, how I would handle a situation. And those are really easy characters to write. There's characters like Gail, who is like, sometimes she's a person I would like to be. Sometimes she's really stupid, but like, it's very hard to get in her space because she doesn't react to things the way I would. She doesn't do things the way I would, and she doesn't struggle with the same things that I do. There's glimmers of it. Like, it came from somewhere. Like, I gave her a struggle with this, and this because I share that, but not at all to the degree that she does. And yeah, I've just found that I found this a lot with like Aaron, and specifically some of like my more minor side characters, where like I don't know, I've just decided that they're this, but it feels right for them, and it feels like that's more true to who they are. And so that's really fun. I do like to like do the play God and like, oh, I can't wait to ruin your life type of thing, and that's fun. And like, I can't wait to like make a reader cry type of a thing. But
no, I relate to that a lot because I had a book that I was writing where the ending had to change because it just didn't fit the characters. So it went from being like kind of a romantic story to just like this total like failed romance story. And I knew it was going to fail at the end, and I knew like if I succeeded, people are going to be kind of pissed and upset and feel horrible about life. And it's like, and yet like, I felt like it concluded the story, and I never felt better than like when I had a couple friends just being like, what the hell, man? Like at that, you know, like there's a kick you get out of that. Like when you've succeeded in like somebody getting emotionally invested in a character where something messed up happens to them, and people are like, why? Like that was my character. And you're like, yeah, that's right.
That's right, baby. I ruined it.
Yeah. But so it's like this weird, I totally relate to what you're talking about. Cause it's like, there's this weird kind of juxtaposition to like, I felt a little heartbroken myself when I was writing that part. Cause I'm like, oh, that sucks that this has to happen to them, you know, cause that's the only thing that would work with these two characters in this situation. But at the same time, also get that kick out of somebody being like, why would you do that? Like, why would you? And you're like, all right. Because I wrote it.
Like when I'm coming up with the ideas, I'm like, ooh, and I'm going to do this to them. And I'm gonna do this to them. And then they're going to react in this totally problematic way. And then da-da-da-da-da. And then when it comes down to doing it, I'm like, I'm so sorry. like when I like,
and the worst part is you have to do it twice to them. Like a regular writer does it once to them, but you have to script it out and then draw it happening to them too.
When you draw it, you go, this is too painful for me. Like that's when you're like, this is because I haven't even like gotten into it yet, you know what I mean? I'm just more of like set the scene of like, hey, this person's sad, and like even doing that, I'm like, I'm so sorry, little baby. I don't want to hurt you now. Like now that I'm here, I want to change my mind. But like there's a lot of that, and then
that's so funny.
It's funny too because like the painful part of writing, like this person's making a bad decision. They're doing stupid, and it's not right, and it's not how they should handle it. But it's what they're gonna do, you know, like that. Like this is what's gonna happen, and like those are what's really hard to write. Like there's this meme of like a guy like pointing a gun, but he's like that, like he's shrinking away, and I feel like that whenever I'm like, this character's being mean right now, or this person's doing a dumb thing. I want to make a reader mad. Like,
it's funny. I'm finding these really weird corners of Reddit right now. Not really weird, but like I found this entire like community of people that are really angry at all the Spider-Man writers for like torturing Peter Parker all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't got in there because I don't like internet arguments, but I'm like,
Yeah.
do you guys not understand writing and storytelling? Like
Yeah.
that is Peter Parker. Like he has to suffer. Like he's an angsty teenager. Like he needs
he is a
adults
teenager.
to crap on him
Yeah.
for him. Like it doesn't work as a character.
No.
If he's
There's
just
a reason
happy.
Uncle
Like, who would
Ben
want to read
dies
like
in every storyline, right?
Yeah.
You know,
yeah. Well,
like he needs that weight.
Yeah. One of the worst Spider-Man stories is Spider-Man and Mary Jane are in love. It's so freaking boring.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, look, they're happy. You guys wanted them to be happy. Now they're happy. And it's like, nothing's happening.
Yep.
Like there's no growth. There's no struggle. There's no stakes.
Yeah, it's funny. Just on that tack, like that reminds me of there was a show that like was kind of poppy and stuff like that, and I watched a few episodes, and it was like How I Met Your Mother, right?
Right.
And the whole premise of it was like, oh my gosh, there's this mystery, there's this friend group, like who's going to be the mother or whatever, and the whole thing collapses the instant you introduce the mother, because like the second you introduce the person who it's going to be, then it becomes like this is just kind of like romance with no stakes. Like it just, and then they have to introduce, you know, it's like, that's the Thanos to that kind of premise or show. It's like like once you introduce the guy who can ruin a universe with a snap of the fingers, where do you go from there? What's the threat after that? And it's a thing to be conscious of, especially when we're writing serial stuff, is like, we don't want to blow that like conflict. Like, you know, if you're writing Peter Parker, you probably should be putting him through hell, you know? Maybe give him an issue where he gets a fun Christmas or something, you know, but like
pages, a whole issue would be super boring. Like, what
it would be. Yeah. And honestly, like I remember those Christmas episodes where, you know, you'd have like, cause I was a Spider-Man reader as a nerdy kid, like worst run of Spider-Man too. Web of Spider-Man. That was my jam. But yeah, they'd have like a Christmas issue or whatever, where it'd be like, everything's great, and then the Green Goblin comes and destroys everything. Ha ha ha! Like that's the fun of Spider-Man, and then he gets to make like an angsty kind of comment, you know? Yeah.
Right. What were you gonna say, Emily?
I think I was just gonna say that like when like you were talking about like the like romantic tension, right? Like I read a ton of romances on Webtoon because like they're slow burn, and like you have waited for 2 years for their hands to touch. So like it's earned, you know, but like when there's like a reason why, like when they finally get together, when the tension finally breaks, like then some sort of crazy over the top drama happens, because what else is there now? You know what I mean?
Right.
You spent all this time working towards something, and now it's empty. Yeah. And one of the things that like there's a lot of younger readers on Webtoon because it's on your phone and it's easy and it's free. Like that's a huge thing for readers. Like I don't know why you don't want to pay for books. Like that's okay if you don't have money, but like I want to pay for my books, but like,
hey, you know what? I just have to highlight that you guys pay for books. Scott Cirkland has Young and the Dead, right? We got our friend Gary Hodges and Dinosaurs versus Mars Bots. Support indie artists. Support like buy some books.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
but the young readers, they don't understand that like in the beginning of a character's arc, they make a lot of boo-boos and they don't understand this thing that they're supposed to understand, but they will, and that's why they don't understand it right now.
You're teaching them that, like as a writer in that space. That's awesome.
Yeah. So you go into comics and like into the comment threads of like any Webtoon, and you go, I don't understand why they don't just apologize to this person. They're obviously in the wrong. This Webtoon sucks. Like, right. and it's like, listen, characters have flaws for a reason. Otherwise, you wouldn't want to read it. And so, and it's not just stirring the pot. It's like, don't worry, it'll pay off. It just hasn't yet. Yeah.
I love it.
We got another question. So if you were to break Seeing Red into a 3-act structure, how far into the story are you currently in terms of like what you're working on? So are you in Act 1, Act 2, or Act 3?
We're still really early into Act 1. It's slow. This is gonna be a slow, long haul. Yeah, I'll just say you don't even know what's happening. You don't even know. I promise you don't even know. You'll be like, oh, it's starting to kick up. No, it's not. Like, it hasn't happened yet. I feel guilt for like how I feel like this is a drama, okay? And in dramas, I feel like the plots are a little bit muddier. You know what I mean? Like, you're like, I read a story. I don't know what the 3-act structure was, but it was good. And I feel like it's kind of floaty and wandering. And I feel guilt for like the fact that nothing has happened yet. Like, I'm getting away with like, ha ha ha, they don't even realize there's no plot in this story yet. Like like it's funny because a lot of like stories that I do like I really like John Green's books.
Oh yeah,
he's wonderful. And one of the things that he was like, the criticism that I have Manic Pixie Dream Girl in this book, like as a trope, is totally inaccurate because the whole point of it is to learn that she has more depth than you think, but she's presented as one first. The real criticism is that I don't have this thing called plot. And I was like, oh yeah, that's true. Like, the end of it is very plotty. Up until then, it's just high school stuff. And I'm very much that way. Like, there's plot points. We'll get there. But
yeah,
I have a very character forward story, and like, let's talk about their feelings. Nothing's happening, but let's talk about their feelings. And so like, that's very much like how my story rolls. And so yeah, like, there's still so much to happen and nothing has really happened yet. We're still just learning about the characters and learning about the setup. So
I love it. That's cool. Yeah, it's funny. I think it's interesting when you have to like sort. I even had a friend of mine who was just like reached out again, like with this book with the ending that's intentionally heartbreaking.
Oh, yeah.
And I had to explain a tragedy to them, like, because they were just familiar with like watching stuff that always resolves perfectly.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's not like that. That's just not this genre. Like,
Yeah.
I don't even market it as the genre. I'm like, it's a doomed romance. It's like, what do you think that means? Like, doomed. It's not gonna. Yeah, they're not gonna. Yeah, it's not gonna work out. And it's like, but it was funny because they're like, yeah, but it doesn't resolve. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's tragic. Like, that's the resolution.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, but like, where's the like, are you saying like life is meaningless? And I'm like, potentially it might actually be saying that. Yeah, totally. And he's like, but do you believe it? And I'm like, no. And it's like, but why would you write that? Because it's a tragedy. Like, what do you? Anyhow, it's just funny. Just imagining that, because that was one exchange, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but on the internet, like, I'm curious. This is leading to a question regarding your book. On the internet, like, most of my readers like are going to be reading physical books and stuff, and people rarely, until a book's selling like mass quantities, aren't going to be like barraging you with a ton of emails. So you get feedback every once in a while.
Right.
But when you're doing a web comic, you're getting like real-time feedback, like as you're working on the story. How much of that sort of thing do you engage with in the comments? Like, if you get that kind of thing, do you even feed it, or do you just kind of go, just wait, or whatever? I'm just kind of curious how you approach that, because I'm sure there's a ton of that. Like, I'm just imagining
as like, because I did have somebody read through the script, so it's not nearly the same as somebody reading through the comic.
Yeah.
I had a beta reader read through most of season 1. Like, I haven't actually written the season finale. I know what happened, but I haven't written it. But like, I had them read through all the things and give feedback of like what they thought was going to happen next. So-and-so said this. What does that mean to them? Do they have any hints? Like things like, are my red herrings work? Like, are they, am I leading them in the right or wrong directions? And so it was good for that. But then like when you visually communicate that, like there's more chances to miscommunicate. And so I definitely use like the feedback if I realize I have miscommunicated.
Good.
So like if somebody says, oh, interesting, does da 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 mean this and this and this, and I go, that's wrong, that's not at all what I meant. So now I'm going to clarify later episode. But
so you don't change the existing thing, but you'll kind of clarify it.
Or if it's like so and so seems to be going in the wrong direction, so I'm going to, in the future things when we talk about this topic again, I'm going to reword some things to different direction. Or the only like direct feedback that I have gotten that was like, can you please da 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 da, was there's a needle in this episode and that's really, I hate that. Can you put a trigger warning at the top of the episode? And I went, oh yeah, people don't like needles, do they? And so then I put one at the top of the episode. And so like things like that, that's been the only direct like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't even think about that, let me go fix that. Otherwise, I mean, like I have I guess I won't say it, but like the episode that is out right now is episode 15. I've lost a net of like 30. A net. I always get a net gain of like 10 to 20. I have a net loss of like about 30 people for that.
Oh wow.
And I know why. I won't say why. Go read the episode. It's episode 16 in the future. I know why. I'm not changing it. You know, like I'm not changing it because I've already set this path for these characters. I've established something. No way, you know? And so like it is what it is. But,
well, I mean, imagine like, I don't know if you're familiar with like Game of Thrones, like, but it's like, it's notorious for killing off like the main character within the first book. And then the season, and I'm not doing a big spoiler, like at this point, it's such a pop cultural thing. Even if you haven't watched it, you probably heard that. And there are so many people who, when that book was published, like, cause I was a nerd, like a fantasy nerd back in the day.
Yeah.
And I remember readers who were just like, I'm never reading this guy again. Like, screw that. Like, and he did suffer like a bit of a drop.
Yeah.
From like, but what's funny is that's the big sell of that book is like, no one's safe. Yeah. Like the stakes are real. And like anybody you get attached to could be gone like that. Yeah. And it's like, it makes for tension and drama. And like, it was a really unique thing to do. And so it's like, you know, if you're seeing like that 30 drop, chances are you're creating a real emotional connection there that caused that 30 drop. And so that will probably return tenfold as you continue in the story. And people, you're again training these people to like the way you're going to kind of craft the story. You know?
Exactly. There's a little bit of like, I mean, episodes are really short. And they come out every 2 weeks. It's a slow moving thing. And so we're still at the beginning, even though we've been at it for months. You know what I mean? But like, I am very much like, hey, this is how it's going to be. Like, yes, there will be soft moments. There'll be sweet moments. There will also be lots of heavy moments. So like, I'm going to get you used to that. You know, like even in these, like, there's a lot of quiet conversation and talking heads and dialogue.
Yeah.
It's action story with like superpowers and stuff, and like I was like, I need to establish early on that this is very much an emotional journey and not like an action journey, even though there is action in it. And so like there's a lot of me just having to establish or even just put in little promise of the premise, like little like, I have a punching bag scene, just so you know, there's going to be punching later, you know, but like otherwise it's like, no, get used to it. This is a story about people talking and learning emotionally things. And so like, there's definitely a lot of that. And yeah, like I also am glad that early on, I'm like, hey, this is going to be in my story.
Yeah.
Bow out. It's good. So stick around.
Yeah.
But you know, yeah.
I like that. That's a good approach.
Thanks.
Okay. So we're a little over an hour and a half. I have one last question, and then we can wrap. This is something that Emily has heard me ask probably hundreds of times because she was my TA for a little while. This is what I ask at the end of every project. But I'm just kind of curious. If you could go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice before you started all of this, what would you ask, or what would you tell yourself?
I would
thought I was muted. I was going to guess for you, but
I don't know, because my beginning was so long. Like the before I started was so long. I would say that I just draw, like get into the program and draw, because like you're gonna hate it for a long time and it's gonna look really ugly, and then just like I don't have the drive for this. Like I make Seeing Red because I really want to make Seeing Red. But like if I had learned to do more sequential stuff before, so that like this story that I love wasn't also like where I make a lot of big mistakes, you know, because I had to redo stuff. And so I would say like this is advice that I wouldn't even take still, because I'm too impatient and I want to do what I want to do. But like, go just make like a 4-page thing, you know, and like just do that, or just go make an action scene with characters you don't know or care about. But like, I don't even think I would follow that advice, because I would then have to do the Tolkien thing of like, well, what are their motivations? Like, what keeps them up at night? And like,
Yeah,
all that stuff. But like, if I had had more experience in sequential stuff, I feel like Seeing Red would be even better. So
you know what though? Like, I'll tell you this: like, the way you get experience in sequential stuff is doing exactly what you're doing.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, a lot of people get really ambitious at first, and some people aren't able to do it. But if you're that motivated by, it sounds like you're just project motivated, and that's good. Yeah. And it's like, that's honestly the best learning you can do. Corey's cited that all the time too. Like his first webcomic, like pretty much taught him how to draw. And it's like, that's kind of insane, but it's like, you know, for Corey and I have both talked about this too. It's like, we're the type of people who like, I don't care about a program. Like I could care less about a program until I need the program. And then like, I will learn that program in a week because like I need it and I have a use for it. So it's like a utilitarian approach to like learning. And I think that's the best way to learn, because that's the stuff that sinks in. Because again, now you're doing a page you care about. So like having to redo it, even that is like a process of learning that like the next project that you'll equally probably care about, which is kind of insane. But it's like, you know, the next project, you'll have all this like experience working through this first thing you love to put into the next thing you love. You know, it's kind of cool. So that's awesome.
And it's nice because I feel like I'm finally like dial it in. Like there's there's a big backlog. There's weeks and weeks and weeks in between when I post something, and that's plenty of time to totally cringe and hate what you made. And be like, it's too bad, I have to put it out anyways, because it meets the criteria of it's good enough, you know. And the only way to fix it is to redo it, and I'm not going to do that. And I'm finally hitting that phase where the things that are coming out now, I'm like, no, I like this episode. There's 4 panels that I think suck, not 4 panels that I think are good, like in this episode. So like I feel like, you know, the big learning curve is behind me, and now it's like, let's just keep getting better slowly over time in a way that is not like, oh my gosh. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. And it's cool because it's like, just by kind of proactively doing it, you're gonna like see that just exponentially increase. That's cool.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, thanks for coming on. That was fun to catch up. And what would you encourage everybody to do? Like, what's the most useful thing? Is it to go on Webtoons and do something specific?
Yeah, go on to Webtoons, hit the little eyeglass, the little search thing, go search Seeing Red. It is a bright red thumbnail, and so it's hard to miss. Read Seeing Red, read all of it, and then subscribe to it. And then I'll be posting every 2 weeks. I have an episode coming out this Monday, so go read it.
Sweet.
That is awesome. And you can find my stuff at CoreyKerr.com. And if you go to CoreyKerr.com, you will see, this is kind of an exclusive sort of, I guess. You'll see something that I haven't really announced yet. So here's a design that I've finished and is available for sale, but I haven't really done like a video on it or a newsletter or anything. So that's coming. And if you want a newsletter on that, then get on CoreyKerr.com/email and sign up for my email newsletter. But all of these are available with a bunch of other stuff on shirts and mugs and all kinds of different things. So you can kind of buy that there. And Josh, where can we find your stuff?
Yeah, so you can find me primarily like on YouTube, just as Joshua Kemble. I do almost daily, every other day live streams while working on a crazy 200-page graphic novel for Turner Publishing. That's like a historical fiction graphic novel about Elizabeth Barrett Browning and Robert Browning, and like the writer Lavender Vroman and myself are documenting an untold story based on Elizabeth Barrett Browning, one of the most famous Victorian era poets, obsession with spiritualism and seances. And there's suspense, there's mystery, and a lot of fun with that. So tune into those. And then also, if you want to support indie comics that are, handwritten, and I guess handwritten is kind of silly, probably typed, but written and created, drawn by creators themselves. Check out Two Stories and Jacob's Apartment at bookstores everywhere. And also, support indie comics. I'm going to shout out Gary just because he just printed these. Make sure you pick up the best written sci-fi epic. I can't even, it's a little genreless, actually. It's just incredible. So make sure you pick up 1979, the latest D versus them. If you haven't picked up the other Dinosaurs versus Mars Bots by Gary, check those out. And also check out Guminelly. I mean, this is really inspiring to see like a new cool story where there's high stakes too. It sounds kind of cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And Scott, where can we find your stuff, and how do we keep track of this?
First, genreless. Come on, it's horror sci-fi. It's great horror sci-fi. I always say it's like Pulp Fiction meets X-Files.
There's the pitch.
So anyway, yeah, that's Gary's book, which just came out, and I read it and I love it, and I can't wait to talk about it. I think I'll probably have him on next week. But let's see. So my stuff, if you also like horror, but maybe not as graphic and as disturbing as Gary's stuff, if you like a little more for kids, but still fun and frightening and stuff like that. My book is Young and the Dead. It's a kids versus zombie adventure stories. It's like Goonies meets Night of the Living Dead. You can find that at my website at circworks.com, and you'll also find all kinds of tools for making comics.
Yes.
And then, you can do a deep dive on my YouTube channel. I'll be back at some point, hopefully next month, posting all different content. But for now, there's there's hundreds of videos, over 1,000 to be precise, all on making comics and art and all kinds of stuff like that. So you can find that out. You can find that on my YouTube channel. Just search Circworks on YouTube and you'll find it there. And the other thing is we do this show every single week. Typically we do it on a Thursday. Today we did it on a Wednesday. And maybe the reason, if you're watching this after the fact and you're like, oh, I didn't even know you recorded that, that's because you're not on our newsletter. And if you were on our newsletter, you'd know that certain days where we can't do it on Thursday, we might do it on Wednesday. And we send out that newsletter to let people know who the guest is going to be, what day we're going to be on, whose channel we're going to be on, because it kind of bounces back and forth between a couple different channels. So it sounds confusing, but it's really not. All you have to do is join the mailing list. We don't spam you or anything. We just send out that little alert to let you know all that stuff. So there's a link in the description for that.
Okay,
Awesome.
Thanks again for coming on, and welcome to all the new people in the chats and to all the old people as well. We will see you guys next week.